First off, thank you very much for having me here. My name is Konstantin. I'm a practice leader for Telecom and Media at Intellias. So Intellias is a mid-market IT services organization with a service offering tailored to the needs of communication service providers and their engineering partners, whether it's network equipment providers, ISVs, and other market participants. We're a fast-growing 2,500 people organization, well-positioned to drive the telco transformational journeys to the digital enterprise. And this is, by the way, the topic of my talk today. So successful strategies for telcos embarking on their digital transformation journeys. So a quick agenda for the talk. So we're going to talk about the whys, what, and how of telecom digital transformation. Talk a little bit about the business model disruption that we're all experiencing that's been there for a while, and how it actually affects the telco's digital journey, specifically with some of the focus areas that CTIOs are looking into and driving, to success. We're also going to talk about the specific strategies for expediting digital transformation, especially with smaller mid-market IT services organizations like ours, and then talk a little bit about the use cases that, in order to demonstrate the theory in the specific practical aspects of this. So let's start with whys, right? So clearly we see that the business model for telecom is being disrupted, right? So the revenues are under pressure. It hasn't been used. The digital native companies, the OTTs and phone manufacturers continue squeezing out all, the value from the telecom carriers. And, in that profit equation where we have the revenue and the cost side of things, the costs are extremely difficult or even impossible to cut, because customers do require, better services, higher bandwidth, faster network, and things of this nature. More than that, we've all heard about the supply chain disruption, the chipset side of things, but also due to the situation in Ukraine right now, there's a significant disruption in the access to the engineering talent. In Europe specifically, a lot of organizations like Deutsche Telekom IT, for example, right, has been delivering their software and solutions out of Russia, and that is not an option anymore. A lot of companies are exiting Russia, for example, Belarus, and are constrained about finding the appropriate engineering talent in the pan-European locations and delivery hubs. So speaking about the perception of a value, so the 5G private networks, the edge computing, the hybrid networks are really changing the way and the definition of the enterprise-grade connectivity. Customers sees value completely different. The basis of competition is changing. I should say that one of the most striking things is that the industry hasn't yet settled on the dominant business model. So a lot of CSPs are still debating, like, hey, should we go and participate in the digital economy, becoming really a system integrator and purveyor of clouds and the appropriate solutions, or should we stick to the connectivity services that's been there for a while? Of course, for those who embark on the digital transformation activities and launch new services, the new monetization strategies and techniques are emerging. It's basically moving from selling the connectivity services to selling the outcomes, selling the private networks that are measured by the performance as well as by the system integration capabilities. And most importantly is that, in that cost equation, the data analytics, the artificial intelligence at scale is becoming one of the critical success factors for driving the cost down, something called the zero-touch operation, the closed-loop assurance components. So one of the important things that is happening from my point of view is that it is exceedingly high, for the CSPs in Europe to attract the best talent regionally, especially in the places where they operate. And this is becoming another challenge, because the Amazons, the Googles of the world, the Azures, Microsofts of the world absorb, the best and brightest. So sometimes it's extremely hard to hire. So given these disruptions, I want to take a look on the specific success factors and the focus areas that the CTIOs are driving in this digital age and how it affects the operation. So first off, regarding the success factors for digital reinvention, There's just the most important ones are listed here on the left-hand side. So we're talking about the ubiquitous adoption of cloud native IT and infrastructure to drive the elasticity, to drive the scalability of the network and IT, the ability to harness and leverage data and AI techniques in order to monetize new data services, in order to drive the autonomous operations of the network. Of course, one of the key success factors is the ability to reinvent and reimagine customer experience and get that trust, akin to the trust and experience that our subscribers are getting used to or got used to from those Silicon Valley startups and those technology companies and giants that are providing this unique user experience to our users, to our subscribers. And of course, speaking about the digital engagement channels that are, the legacy ones becoming completely obsolete, and the omni-channel digital engagement experiences needs to be adopted in order to acquire users, boost ARPU, reduce churn in other regions. With 5G rollout and the implementation of non-telco business models, we see the emergence of the new digital services, and of course the ecosystem partnership that need to be stood up in order to be successful in this business. And as I mentioned, talent is also becoming an extremely challenging and important factor in order to remove some of those constraints to growth. So what are the practical focus areas that the CTIOs of our CSP customers are taking care of and looking at critically and adopting to? So on the IT side of things, it's evolution from the legacy IT that is largely data center driven, monolithic and complex legacy systems to the cloud native implementation of the IT infrastructure, agile and DevOps practices, the microservices-based architecture. The adoption of the low-code solution as much as possible in order to improve the time to market, in order to speed up things, when it comes to the implementation. The migration from the system of records to the system of engagement, with the customer, and then the continuous change in the IT. Which is driving a lot of those operational programs within the IT organizations. On the infrastructure side of things, where it's typically handled by the CTOs of the organization, we see the move and transition from the discrete network elements to the autonomous virtualized network environments that can be rolled out on the agnostic hardware with appropriate virtualization techniques. Security is becoming very important. There's a move from the reactive security approaches to the security-centric operation with a significantly high pace of change that is data-driven, and then of course the implementation of the open platforms and architectures. Services, the key drivers of the revenue equation. So we see a shift from the limited portfolio of services to the diverse portfolio of services that are mainly driven by the ecosystem partnerships, the open APIs, the simplification. Services are becoming much more simpler in order to be accessible by the customers. And then, of course, the emergence of the digital new business models, both telco and non-telco. On the customer engagement side of things, we've been seeing this discrete separate touch points where different systems have different flows and logic to the omnichannel experience and the high level of personalization that is being provided, to the consumers through the customer engagement management platforms and the omnichannel CRM components. And of course, the operation that is shifting from the, more kind of ops, do things, type of the approaches to the focus on the products and subscribers, and of course, much more flexible, agile organizational structure, and evolution of culture. When it comes to being able to develop a lot of software both internally but also outsource to the engineering partners. So these are the key focus areas that our IT directors are facing right now. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the practical tips and hints that we view and we think, work really well for the communication service providers in order to reimagine and reinvent the business model and their operation. So, talking about the strategies that to expedite the digital transformation. So, the first and most important, the IT organizations should not be viewed anymore as the cost centers. They got to be viewed as a strategy-driven, revenue-generating functions, and this is why the vision, incentives, and the appropriate strategic priorities within the IT organizations are key. We've seen, when we approach some of the customers, they oftentimes say, "Hey, strategy is first," and sometimes they're still working on some of the strategic components when it comes to cloudification, AI, DevOps, and things of this nature. Another important strategy is the ability to implement digitally native customer experience based on the front end side of the things, but also on the back office side of the things, as well as building the non-telco digital services. The reason customer experience is important not only on the front office side of things, on the systems and platforms and the subscriber touch points, but also on the back office side of things, because we've been seeing projects when some of the platforms and systems that's being adopted by the operators inside the organization, for example, the identity and access management solutions, are extremely hard to navigate and figure out. Some of the internal users just opening, tens and hundreds of tickets because, the typical off-the-shelf systems are so hard to understand, to navigate, and the user experience is really not there. So this digitally native user experience got to be implemented both for subscribers, the end users, the corporate customers, but also for the back office operations to make it easy and intuitive for internal customers to use IT. One of the most important things here is the rapid implementation of the modern IT stack and enablers. Especially when it comes to modernization, revamp of some of the legacy IT systems and architectures. So whether those are the legacy data warehouse systems that are on-prem and not efficient, all the way to the modernization of the CRM platforms and workforce management platforms, network planning platforms, and things of this nature. So the modern IT stack, when it comes to the data infrastructure, platforms, clouds, data masking between the on-prem and cloud infrastructure, the ability to use the open APIs and open source tools and within the IT and network side of things is becoming extremely important for the agility of the IT operations, for time to market, and for costs. Operating model. So we talked a little bit about the ongoing shift, but it's a big cultural shift. How do we go from the way things been done in the past? There's to the way things need to be done now or in the future when it comes to organizing and setting up your digital organization of way of working that is driven by agile principles and DevOps to agile procurement. Situations when the procurement cycle has been stretching anywhere from 3 to 12 months are not good anymore, if you want to launch digital services fast. Importantly enough is the ability to get talent, the engineering talent, the modern the talent in the modern IT stack, both locally where the operators and the vendors are located, but also to tap into the talent pool, in other pan-European locations, and a lot of the IT services locations that are rich with the engineering talent are those in Eastern Europe. So the strategy to go outside of the typical delivery locations and build delivery centers, competency centers outside of your areas of operation is extremely important. And why is that important? Because it helps deliver the capabilities, both nurture internally, but also tap into the external pool of modern and competent engineers and product managers and design thinkers that would help you create the capabilities, talent, and culture that is needed, to go and to navigate this digital transformation journey. And lastly is the open ecosystem, agile and cost-effective vendor relationship. And I cannot say more about it every time I'm speaking with communication service providers, because in a dominant setup, they're so used to working with the larger organizations that are having hundreds of thousands of people, and sometimes a little bit locked, not a little bit not open to engaging with the mid-market companies. And this is, I think, oftentimes can be an issue. If you want to launch services fast, if you want to build those ecosystem partnerships that develop services fast, that are launching new business model fast and experimenting with innovation in the telecom settings and context. So I should say that that some of the key strategies really revolve around, understanding what you want to do next, designing your customer experience strategies, getting access to the best and brightest engineers and competencies, not just in your delivery locations, but outside of that, redesigning your operating model, building the agile practices, and then tapping into the ecosystem partnerships. So having said that, I'd like to show just a handful of examples where the mid-market companies like us helped tier one operators, but also vendors achieve some of those goals through a tight win-to-win partnerships. So one of the examples is the work that we've done recently with one of the tier one customers in Eastern Europe. So the customer had the legacy data warehouse platform that's been extremely hard to operate, that's been extremely inefficient when it comes to provisioning of new data services to the corporate customers. There's been a lengthy procurement cycles in order to get the on-prem hardware to scale the appropriate infrastructure and to implement new products and services. The total cost of ownership was really through the roof because a lot of the data warehouse and data lake components are used only at peaks. When you generate the financial reporting, a lot of backups and information is being stored redundantly, and goes without saying that the data infrastructure this time around is being exponentially grown by the inflow of data that is being generated by the network components and other user devices. So the excessive compute and storage capacity was there. So the operator had to spend millions and millions of dollars in order to procure new hardware. And legacy platforms were extremely hard to upgrade. So when we were tasked, to look critically and how can we re-engineer, how can we re-platform the data warehouse and data lake, we proposed to use the PaaS components in Azure Cloud specifically in order to redesign the data warehouse and data lake for the cloud. So here are some of the key facts and information that I think you'll find interesting. So we're talking about over 500 terabytes of data in the DVH only, over 2.5 petabytes of data in the DMP, where that is largely being underutilized. So we're talking about 40% average utilization, but at the time when you need to generate those corporate and financial reports, it went up to 90. And this is where the inefficiency is. You're maintaining the hardware for 90%, but you only use 40, right? So, and as we looked at the possible solutions, we've identified Azure PaaS components as one of the effective and efficient tooling for redesigning and replatforming the data warehouse and data lake system. Here's some of the outcomes that we've got, right? So we've been able to lower the total cost of ownership by over 20% by using the cloud native implementation. By the native inherent capabilities of Azure Cloud, we were able to quickly introduce new data products and services in a matter of hours and days rather than a matter of months. We got the appropriate elasticity that cloud is promising in this type of environment where you pay for what you use, and of course design the appropriate future-proof architecture with the appropriate data processing requirements, artificial intelligence and ML techniques and algorithms for predictive analytics purposes. And by doing that, we've helped also improve the maintenance and serviceability of the platform by using the maintenance services for the hyperscale compute provider, but also on the application side of things, leverage the capabilities that we have in the organization. So this is just one of the examples how the mid-market companies can help tier one carriers optimize their spend, increase their time to market, and increase the agility through the processes and tooling that we just discussed, right? And through the focus areas that I've mentioned that the CTIOs is having these days in order to reinvent the organizations and drive digital experience. So I guess with that, I might ask, take maybe additional questions from the audience and maybe share additional insights that might be relevant to the forum.
Thank you very much. I think that was really interesting, actually. So three things. The first thing that occurred to me when you were talking about telco's bad habit of looking at IT as a cost center, and I've forgotten who said it to me many years ago, that the difference between telcos and digital natives are that telcos see IT as a cost center, and for digital natives, IT is the business. And I thought that really stuck with me in a big way. The other thing, I suppose, is looking at a hardware that's geared for 90% peak and used at 40%. That's not new, but it is a bit of a reminder of actually why we're pursuing different approaches and options. And the third thing I'd like to ask you, if you could just elaborate a little bit on, you talked about two ways of working with customers, and one is team extension and the other is a managed program. Could you just add a bit more detail to those, please?
Sure. So the way Intellias is looking at working with carriers, but also more broadly with tech customers, is that we're trying to look holistically on the engineering needs of our customers. So oftentimes, when the tech problem is not necessarily defined, we could step in and do some of the consulting work, helping our customers understand, the appropriate technology, the best tooling that is out there. So sometimes that technology work evolves in several engagement models. It could be the managed deliveries when an IT services company like us, takes the end-to-end responsibility for driving the work and essentially defining the specific KPIs and the definition of done, and then developing those platforms, developing those applications under the end-to-end responsibility. There are situations out there when our customers, have some of their delivery locations, whether at their headquarters, but also maybe at the nearshore locations, and they're approaching us to essentially extend some of their teams with the appropriate specialized talent. So whether it's BSS, whether it's cloud, whether it's IoT, we have teams and center of excellence that pertain to the specific functional areas. And now we can say, hey, we can give you, several Scrum teams, for example, to complement your existing teams and then blend into those environments. And then at the end of this, whether it's a team extension and managed deliveries, oftentimes our carrier customers are asking us, to provide the managed service under the managed service SLA. So we start at the consulting, we find the appropriate engagement model, whether it's driving end-to-end work or providing the specialized resources, and then driving that all the way to the managed service SLA-driven engagements.
Okay. We don't have any more questions. Is there anything, Konstantin, if we had to remember one thing, what would it be from your presentation? What do you think is the single most important thing, apart from take more notice of middle-sized companies? We've got a lot to offer.
Absolutely. So first off, I think what is happening in Europe right now, given the situation and the war in Ukraine, is that there's a complete disruption to the engineering talent industry that is happening, right? And one of the things that I've been observing that are naturally happening is that a lot of those companies just exiting the adversary countries and are trying to find engineering talent in other places. So one thing and one takeaway that I'd like, hopefully be our CSP customers open to is first, be open to working with the mid-market companies, and second, still consider Eastern Europe, consider Poland, consider Ukraine as your delivery locations to support the country and to help Ukraine get out of the specific war situation that we're in. Please support Ukraine. I think they'll be extremely valuable.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Konstantin.
Thank you, Annie, for having me here, and thank you very much. Looking forward to staying in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.